This time here in Goss's garage, I want to give you a little primer on ignition switches. You see, ignition switches are much more complex than what most people think they are. I see a lot of technicians that make mistakes. I see do-it-yourselfers that make mistakes. And the mistake is real simple. They look at the ignition switch as one switch, when in reality, it is one control for multiple switches. In other words, you're going to use the key to turn one device, but that one device is going to control various parts of this ignition switch. So as you turn it around, you make contact, maybe first with this one and then this one and so on around the ignition switch. Now, the mistake is that you may have an intermittent problem with certain things on the car. Maybe it sometimes doesn't want to start. You crank it, it cranks okay, so you presume that because the starter motor is spinning the engine in the car, that the ignition switch is doing fine, because when you turn it to the start position, starter motor engages. Hey, everything's working, it's fine. But what you may not be doing or recognizing is that one of these contacts in here, it may be burnt or it may be out of alignment or something like that. And it isn't completing the circuit to the ignition system. So you don't have any spark, you don't have any fuel, you don't have anything like that, so the engine can't run. So the big lesson here with this is that you don't want to overlook the ignition switch. Now, you'll need a wiring diagram to check it because you don't know what goes where and so on. But by applying power, like this one, it has a bigger wire here that supplies power to the rest of the circuit. You can check for power in. If you don't, then you trace that wire back to the battery, which is the source for all of the power. Could be a blown fuse on some cars, could be who knows what. A bad wire connector such as we have on the other end of this. Big thing is that you have to find why there's no power in. If there is power into the switch, then you go through each cycle of the switch and you check for power out right here at the switch. And if you have one of them that there's no power coming out of it, then you know you have a bad switch because you have power coming in, no power coming out. What's in the middle? The switch itself. The other thing, of course, is to trace the wires down to the first wire connector and make sure that there isn't a broken wire in here or something like that. So power in, power out, power at the first connector, and so on. That's the way you diagnose them. The big thing is, don't disregard the ignition switch when you have an intermittent problem. We see cars that come in that intermittently stall. Well, that is often a result of a bad ignition switch. You hit a bump, contacts in here are bad, loses contact, shuts the engine down, and you're dead in the water. Shut it off, turn it back on, starts right up because you have reestablished the bad connection. Now you've made it a good connection inside the switch and the car runs. So don't overlook it. And if you have a question or a comment or just want a lot of great automotive advice, check us out at goss-garage.com.